It was a weird thing.
They said that.
Yeah, it is fun. I really enjoyed the
Really, she knows that this
colors
time was here. So
They're
not here.
We're like, well, we'll give it to you.
Okay.
We'll start from July or something. So it just really, it took a long time, but finally have on the last paycheck. So better, just 10 months later.
We're close to it. Now, before we miss it. Regina Tammy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3. 4, 5. Okay. I'll announce that for both meetings, all right?
And so it was like, what do you do?
I have it in there, but I see you brought
Just
this
call
one.
child care in an emergency.
Oh, you this one.
Okay.
Unless you already have
Well, I
it
just did that
prearranged.
because.
There's magic in yours, Dave.
So you're gonna have a new chair there, so.
That's
Well,
true.
maybe not. Are you ready?
True, I'm ready. Good evening and welcome to the Creswell City Council meeting. The meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency, followed by the meeting of the Budget Committee. So would you please stand with me and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Norman, if you come up and take your spot. So we are down currently 2 council members, Tammy, Councilor Shuck, and Councilor, who's the other one we're missing?
Dave Nicholson.
Just Councilor Shuck is absent, and I have not received any notice, so that's an unexcused absence. Dave Nicholson is our citizen member. He is also absent, and that's also an unexcused absence. All right, we begin tonight with the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee, and the first item is to elect a chair of the Urban Renewal Agency. So I am opening the floor for nominations for chair. Do we have any nominations for the chair? Not yet, we don't. Councilor Castillo.
I would like to nominate Robert Jackson.
All right, we have a nomination for Robert Jackson. Have any additional nominations? I would nominate Clark Kent. Any additional nominations? All right, then we'll close the nominations. We have 2 nominations. We will vote first for Mr. Jackson. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Is this
Hold on.
everybody? Okay.
Keep them up, please.
All right, all those in favor of Mr. Kent, please raise your hand. All right, and Mr. Jackson is nominated chair of the Urban Renewal Agency. So I'm going to pass the gavel down to you, Mr. Jackson, and then you will run the nomination for a vice chair.
All right. We're now accepting nominations for the vice chair of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee. Do we have any nominations?
I nominate Clark Kent.
Are there any we have a nomination for Clark Kent. Is there any other nominations? Doesn't look like it, so We do have one nomination for Clark Kent, so let's take a vote on that nomination. All in favor of Clark Kent, please raise your hand. Good, Roberta.
I've got it, thanks.
All those, well, that was an anonymous, so we don't have it. First time running a meeting here. All right, so the next item on our agenda is to approve the Urban Renewal Budget Committee meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look those over? Anybody have any questions about them? All right, so if nobody has any questions about them, then we will take a vote to approve those minutes. All those in favor?
You need a motion and a
Oh.
second.
All right, sorry. Do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the Urban Renewal Agency?
I'll motion to approve the meeting minutes for the Urban Renewal Agency.
All right, we have a motion from Stacy Holt. Do we have a second? Council Prachu? All right, Council Prachu is seconding that. So in that case, we will take a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Pretty good. All right, so those did pass unanimously. The next item on the agenda is to receive public comment on the proposed budget. Do you have any public comment, Roberta?
I do not.
So given that, the next step is to receive the budget message from Jim. I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Everyone should have a printed and bound copy of the Creswell Urban Renewal Agency budget for fiscal year 2022-23. And if everyone would turn to page 4, I'll go ahead and read it, the budget message. Honorable Chairperson, Budget Committee members, and citizens of Creswell, the attached proposed budget for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending July 30, 2023. The Creswell Urban Renewal Agency is the only urban renewal district in place in the city of Creswell. It is overseen by the members of the City Council. The Creswell Urban Renewal Agency was enacted through ordinance of the City Council in August of 2018 with the objectives of eliminating blight and its influences, revitalizing Creswell through attracting new private investment, and enhancing the existing private and public investment in the area. Urban renewal districts are one of the most utilized economic development tools in Oregon. As a tax increment finance tool, urban renewal can be hard to understand. However, the core concept of urban renewal is simple. Urban renewal takes a small portion of the appreciated value of the district over time. Appreciated value of the property in a given area and invests in its projects that are expected to increase the overall value of the district over time, eliminate blight, and stimulate investment. Oregon's experience with urban renewal suggests this strategy has been generally successful around the state. Strategic investment in key public infrastructure projects is a traditional role for the urban renewal funds. The investment in these projects is meant to remove barriers for development or spur the economy so that blight is removed and private investment will follow. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 reflects the continued collection of tax increment and funding a right-of-way purchase that is part of a plan to construct a new roadway as a minor collector from the I-5 southbound ramp's terminus. This purchase is a carryover from the prior fiscal year as we continue to negotiate the sale with the landowner. We look to the new fiscal year to carefully consider future projects, how to best leverage funding, borrowing capacity, and creative ways to partner with our other community organizations in the advancement of Creswell's industrial and commercial lands. Respectfully submitted by myself and Manager Anberg. If you read through pages 5 through 7, this explains, it starts with a map of the plan area, and it explains the general plan for this area. And then on page 8, it's a one-page budget. It is one fund. It is expected to collect property taxes over the next fiscal year. And then part of spending urban renewals, you have to borrow the funds to spend the funds. There is a loan for an amount. It will be, it's likely to be an interfund loan from the general fund. And they pay it back with the tax increment over time. And the purchase amount of the right-of-way is under capital outlay. Then you'll notice in this year, we have a few expenses. We notice that there are some reporting requirements that we have to do over the year, and there are some expenditures related to that. And then if we do have this purchase, we'll have some auditing requirements. So there'll be some fees for that as well. And then there's a small amount of fees for engineering, should we have to, involve our engineers in that right-of-way development. All right, is there any questions from the Budget Committee at this time?
Ms. Kevin?
Thank you. Jim, so I appreciate all that you've put together here, and as I look through the list of projects, can you tell me, does that mean that these are just urban renewal eligible projects? Is that how that works?
Yes.
So, good. So it's not the only way that these projects get funded, it's just that they're part of what could qualify for urban renewal funds.
Right, and if you remember back to adopting the urban renewal plan, if it's not in the urban renewal plan, we can't spend urban renewal dollars on it. So, and there's quite a process if we were ever to amend that plan. There's a lot of work there as well. So we want to stick to the plan.
Cool. Yeah, I figured it had to be that way because there's a lot of projects and it would take millions of years to fund them if we were just depending on the urban renewal funds. Okay, thank you.
Dave, go ahead.
So the hope this year is to purchase the right-of-way access, the land essentially, but not anything to do with actually building anything on it. Okay.
No, so.
Could the actual building of a roadway be part of the urban renewal funding in the future?
Yes,
Okay.
it will be. But we have to acquire the right-of-way first.
Thank you.
And right now, all we have the horizon for is to take out the loan for the purchase of the right-of-way.
Gotta start someplace.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so any other questions for Michelle or Jim? So that takes us to our next agenda item, which is discussion of the proposed budget. Do we have any further questions or anything you'd like to discuss about the urban renewal proposed budget for 2022, 2023? All right, so that would take us to our next item, which is a motion to approve the 2022-2023 budget for the Creswell Urban Renewal Agency. Do I have a motion to approve the budget for the Creswell Urban Renewal Agency? Mayor Stryan.
I move to approve the budget for the Creswell Urban Renewal Agency for the 2022-2023 fiscal year as presented.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Gordon has seconded. So now we will move to a vote. All of those in favor of approving the 2022-23 Creswell Urban Renewal Agency, please raise your hand. We good? All right, that looks like that passed unanimously. Okay, the next item is the motion to approve taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Do I have a motion to approve the taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year? Council Pratchett?
Go ahead and make the motion to approve the taxes for the 22-23 budget year as presented.
Do I have a second to that motion? Clarkson?
I second that motion.
You need to read the whole.
Oh, you read the whole thing, Kevin.
Yeah, Councilor Pritchard.
Sorry, Council Pratchett.
Okay, yes. Let's go ahead and make the motion. Move to approve the collection of maximum amount of funds from Division of Taxes under Section 1C, Article, what is 1X? 9. I don't know Roman numerals very well. Article 9 of the Oregon Constitution in accordance with the approved Creswell Urban Renewal Agency Plan and as provided in Oregon Revised Statute 457.420, Section 1, to be certified by the tax assessor.
That's great.
And the second was.
Thank you, Council
Need a
Pratchett.
second reading.
I second that motion. Again.
All right, Clark Kent has seconded that again. All right, now that we have done that, all those in favor of approving the taxes, please raise your hand. All right, that looks like that passed unanimously. And that leads us to our adjournment of the Creswell Urban Renewal Budget Committee meeting. And is that 6:17, Roberta, is that what you have?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'll study my Roman numerals.
You did great.
Great job. I recommend Star Wars series.
Yeah, there you
Do you want to swap places or stay right there?
I'm good staying here. If that works.
Pass that gavel down to Shelley,
Oh,
please.
Pass the water. Is that the kind you do?
Blue cherry, please.
There you go.
Got this gavel.
Oh, yeah. I should have followed the guidance that was right there on the paper in front of me.
What's this?
This is for tonight's budget committee meeting for the city of Creswell.
So maybe section
One
one.
entity to the other.
What is that? It's not first.
Yeah, first.
I'll keep Q&A's for you. Oh, well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good job, Chair Jackson.
Yes.
And for my first time, we made a dunce mistake.
I like the sound of Chair Jackson. Cool. Chair Kent would have been really awesome too.
Yeah,
Catch
down the
up.
line,
All right.
down the line. I'm patient person.
I am ready.
All right, thank you for joining us after a very brief recess. Welcome to the May 16th Creswell Budget Committee. I am your chair, and as I look around and take roll, I notice that Councilor Shuck and David Nicholson are not present, and both are unexcused absences. So at this time, I will receive public comment on the proposed budget and possible uses of the state revenue sharing funds. Roberta, did we have any public comment?
You do not.
No. All right. So we will now start our public hearing. I'm going to pull up some information. So the City of Creswell will conduct a public hearing on the possible uses of state revenue sharing funds in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. These funds are proposed to be used for work on the comprehensive plan update and community contributions for nonprofit emergency needs, both appropriated in the general fund. And so, the City Council will conduct a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. The committee wishes to hear from anyone who is interested in commenting on proposed 2022-2023 budget. So the public hearing is now open. Has there been any written testimony received, or is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak?
No written testimony.
There's no written testimony. Okay. We will need to leave this open for a minute, and so I will start paying attention to the clock. All right, there being no further testimony, the public hearing is now closed. We'll now move into agenda item 4, discussion of proposed 2022-2023 budget. I'll open the floor if there are any further questions. Yes.
There we go. I have just a general comment. I was really excited about the possibility with the grant for the fiber, the $80,000. That is tremendous, and I'm excited about that. And I was just wondering, do we need a motion to amend that to the budget, or is it all sort of in one presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. To answer that question, it's just, you would just approve the budget as amended.
Okay. Thank you. I have a Grange background, and we always have to vote on the amendment, so I'm trying not to mix and match.
Excellent. Councilor Pacho?
So in the same vein, since you brought that one up, I thought that was interesting too. That covers basically fiber to the wastewater treatment plant, is that right?
The water treatment plant.
Water treatment plant, okay. And then is there other advantages to that? Like, will anybody be able to tap into that fiber later on down the road, or?
Let's just say the infrastructure will be on the east side of Interstate 5.
Okay.
That seems to be the obstacle right now.
Our objective will be to have the ability to tap into the fiber on that side of the road. We haven't gone out for an RFP yet, and we haven't selected the company that would actually lay the lines. This is, of course, part of the groundwork that we have to do is get it in the budget first. But once we do, we can certainly look into some other avenues of fiber extension throughout the east side of our community.
Okay, so it may later go to serve more than just this purpose.
It may have the ability to allow a private vendor to tap into the line.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so that wasn't actually my question, but I just had to, to throw that in there while I was at it. So I have another one, and that was related to on page 42, under major goals, which I'm really excited about the work that we're doing with RAIN. But the second item is for contracting an entrepreneur in community and to support local businesses. And I wanted to know a little bit more about that, and then maybe to know, is that part of the economic and improvement and development line item for 22,000? Or I'm sorry, 28,000 is the proposed. Is that contractor part of that number?
Yeah, the entrepreneur and community is actually part of the RAIN contract.
Oh, it's part of the RAIN, okay.
Right.
All right.
This would be a person that would actually work for RAIN. We had an entrepreneur and community earlier this year. It was Seth Evans, and he was, Seth Evans? Clark, thank you. Seth Evans works for us. It was Seth Clark, and he did a magnificent job in helping small startups get their books in alignment and also giving a lot of great just advice on how to run a business. Unfortunately, he had some situation where he had to step down, so right now we don't have the entrepreneur and community, but we would like to, it was so valuable that we would like to continue with it in the coming year.
Okay. And out of that 28,000, how much goes to contract to that person?
$1,000 a month.
Okay. That's my questions for now.
Excellent. The floor is open. Stacy Holt.
I'm a bit confused on how the water and sewer rates were come about. I read some of the questions that people posed coming into this, and it doesn't appear that the cost of living adjustment is factored into that. Is that correct?
The cost of living adjustment will have very little impact on the rates this year.
So it will have very little or have no impact?
Little to none. It's very, I think it was, well, it was in here, a 2.5% for water and 1.3% of the, of that personal service line item. And then it gets even further diluted when you add in the materials and services. Debt service is fixed, so that's a good thing going forward. It will be that rate. There won't be an increase year over year. When we met with the committee, their emphasis was more on future reserves than the impact currently in materials and service costs.
Okay. So if we were to lower the COLA, you're saying it wouldn't be a significant impact?
That wouldn't significantly impact rates. If rates weren't increased, the impact would be to future reserves. And I want to be absolutely clear about that.
With sewer and water, such a large amount of the cost is infrastructure and equipment and gasoline and chemicals and things like that, that the actual personnel portion is small. So that's why the ratio is, it's not.
So what revenues are covering that personnel increase?
The same, but the ratio of what the cost is. So you might have a $1 million budget, and out of that, only 12% of it might be your cost for staffing. So that's why it's not like in some other areas of the budget where policing, for example, is all staffing. So that's, if you change the COLA for that, it's not that it'll hit the policing, because that's a bad example, because that's under contract, but if the heavier your weight is on the staffing side, the greater the impact of the COLA is going to be.
Okay.
That's all I was trying to say.
That's a great explanation.
Mayor Stram.
Well, I'd kind of like to follow up on that, because this was a good couple of questions. And then reading the follow-up question, Jim, it took me to page 62 in the budget, where I had to get my calculator on and put my thinking cap on.
Right.
And so page 62, under the budget for 2021-22, shows materials and personal services is $685,000, with a projected increase this next year of $702,000, of which, if I'm reading your answer correct, $16,000 is the increase that has to do with personnel.
Right.
So of a budget of $700,000, $16,000 is that COLA.
Correct.
I mean, that's a very small number, and that's what kind of clicked in my brain. And then you go down below to materials and services, and the budget for 21-22 was $477,000, and the proposed is $516, which is an increase of the other $39,000, I believe. So then you tag it all together, if I had my thinking cap on correct, and the total cost of water, bottom line, is $1.24 million projected,
Correct.
of which that amount, less than $17,000, is the COLA increase. So then I gave up working that out with my calculator, because it was such a small number. $17,000 of a $1.2 million is the COLA increase.
I don't know where you're getting 17,000.
Well, the budget under materials and under personal services, budget 2021-22, shows the number 685,245.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And then you have to skip a line to propose for next year, which is a 702, and that makes the 16,957. So there's an increase of just under 17,000 in personal services, which is the COLA.
Okay.
So that's the actual COLA increase of a total water budget of 1.2 million. So then I thought, okay, 17,000 divided by 1.2 million, and it helped me put it in perspective. So I appreciate your answer, because at first I thought, well, okay, I kind of see where you're getting at, but, so that was helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate you digging that out, and the materials and services are gonna go up 8%, that 39,000 you're explaining. And if you look at line by line, it's those increases are from a rise in the cost of supplies, fuel, which we all are feeling that right now with the cost of fuel, chemicals, and electricity. So our electric utilities are planning on increasing significantly in the next fiscal year as well.
So I did have a follow-up comment on the COLA of 7%, which is a big increase as COLAs go.
Sure.
And it's tied in, I know, to what's happening this year, but also last year there was no increase to COLA.
That was 2020, not last year.
Year before last.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then last year there was a 1.7,
1.7.
which was very small.
So partly the 7% is because over 2 years it's only been 1.7, a small part. So I guess the thought I had was, I hearkened back to past days when I had a person renting a facility, and there were times we wouldn't increase the rent because finances were tough, and then we'd catch up a few years later. And at one point they said, the catch-up is killing me. Can't we just every year have an incremental increase even if times are tough? And I thought, that's kind of a consideration, and I was on the budget committee 2 years ago, so I didn't think of it then. But
Stacy Holt?
When it was decided not to take a COLA in 2020, was there an agreement made to make up for it later?
There was no agreement to make up for it later.
And same with 2021, was there ever any discussion to make up for the lower COLA in 2021 later?
The only discussion that we have regarding making up the COLA or anything that might affect salary is we do a salary review. And at that time, we bring people up and make them whole. But as far as the COLA goes, no.
I didn't do a salary review, but I did a quick, I Googled, the average income for city municipals, and so it was literally everything, like you've got your Seattle in it, you've got Creswell in it, everything, and it put Creswell 5% above the national average. I thought that was pretty stellar. So, it's just something to think about, but I think that the reason I'm asking these questions is because I think in this economy, the people that live here in Creswell are gonna have a hard time swallowing 7%. I'm just throwing that out there.
Mayor Strand?
So then I have a follow-up question to Mayor Amberg. I know that in one of the earlier salary studies we did, the approach the council took and that you took was that we wanted our staff not to be at the top, not to be at the bottom, but somewhere in the middle.
And the most recent salary review that we did, we put people at the median salary level for the study that was done. So we were not 5% above Seattle.
No, I'm saying that Seattle was included in that sort of conglomerate, not above Seattle, I'm just saying it included cities as big as Seattle and as little as Creswell. It was just everything, all city municipals.
Ours came out in the median.
What happens when you do a salary study? Oh, sorry. When you do a salary study and you find out you're above the norm, you don't lower people's pay, I'm sure.
Well, what you do is you freeze it.
Okay.
And there were some people whose salaries are frozen. But we go on a position by position look, and we look at our comparators, which are similar cities to us. And we look not only at pay, but we look also at benefits, and we look at vacation and things like that to make sure that we are actually in the median.
Clerk?
Purely out of curiosity, do you remember any of those other cities? I'd just be curious to hear them. Thank you.
Well, Philomath is one. They have a population very similar to ours, a very similar structure to ours. We look at the metro area as an area because we would lose people to Eugene or Springfield, although we don't use them as direct comparators, we use them as indirect comparators, just to make sure that we are right-sized for a city of our size. I'm trying to think of who our other comparators are. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I know Philomath because their population is so close to ours.
Thank you.
Councilor Castillo?
Yes, thank you. So if I understand this correctly, and from what I've heard, the 7% has little to no effect as far as the labor goes for 22, 23. How about the following year? How will that impact it?
We will look at the following year and look at what the CPI is doing and suggest a COLA at that time. This is high. It's tied to the CPI right now, and I hope to not have to do another COLA of this magnitude.
It seems pretty generous. I would not be opposed to reconsider these increases across the board. I think that is a big ask for the citizens. As altogether, the utility bill would be 9% together combined, right? The 5 and then the 4.
They're not combined.
Oh, they're not. It's not 5 for sewer, or which one is it? One is sewer, one is water.
It doesn't combine that way.
Does it come under,
No, it would be averaged over the two.
it would be averaged over the two? So then it would be, on average, I think according to this, would be about $80 per household per year for the citizens, right? Is that not what one of these questions said? Oh, somebody. Yeah, 661 per month. So the average, 5% increase of the utility bill. And
Right,
then-
because they're saying the combined would average out to 5% of the
Okay.
total utility bill.
Okay,
Right.
so if I get my little calculator,
Yep.
that's, on average, that's about $80 per household, on average,
Per year.
per year. Yes, per year.
Okay.
So, I'm fine with public safety, that's no problem there. But it just feels like it's a big ask for the citizens of Creswell to take that and at the same time give 7% which somehow, it's hard to make that disconnect as far as the labor tied to that. But, I heard your explanation, so anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
Sure.
Mayor Strand?
So I'm sitting here crunching numbers as you're talking. So I did a quick math of $17,000. That's the 7% as it affects just the water, not the sewer portion of the bill. And then I divided that by the total water fund of 1.2 million, and I came up with a percentage of 0.136. So then I divided that portion. Anyways, I came up with and for my water bill, and my water bill comes out to be the total increase for mine's a little bit under that average. My water bill and my water, sewer, and my public safety will increase an average of 5.33%. But just my water portion, as it's reflected in the personal services 7% COLA, comes out to $5.44 per year. So that $80 increase, I'm paying $5.50 more per year for 7% COLA. If my math is accurate, that's how minimal the COLA is as it affects water. Now, it's gonna have an impact on sewer, so maybe I'm looking at $10 or $11 per year. But as much as 7% looks like it's a high number, and it is in relation to normal years. You know, one of the values that we talked about in city council meeting, just in our strategic planning, was our staff. And the importance of making sure that our staff are equitably compensated per their jobs, per their experience. We have a really good staff. So anyways, my input is 7% is high, but as it actually impacts in terms of real numbers, it's a pretty small amount.
Stacy Holt?
I understand what you're saying, but I think the perception is going to be what you have to fight on this. I think that when you're telling a community of people, most of them probably don't even get COLA. They don't know what COLA is. Most of them don't get yearly raises, right? And I think that on the surface, it's going to look bad. If it's such a small fraction to water and sewer, that means that the funding from water and sewer is not covering the whole 7%. So what funding is? How are we paying for it?
How are we paying for?
If we give a 7% COLA, what revenue is picking that COLA up? What
Throughout
revenue?
the whole budget?
The biggest chunk of it. If water and sewer are such small portions, I'm curious what the largest chunk of it is. Because I was so hyper-focused on those that I don't have the answer to that myself.
Okay, it would be the other funding sources that we have. It would be fees, it would be taxes, it would be charges, those sorts of things.
Okay.
Manager Amber, I saw that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we are fortunate in that we're not a union shop. So we do have the ability to have these discussions and come to a number that seems to be agreeable and fair. And it's important that we don't become a union shop. We have this freedom to actually have this conversation because of that. So just kind of keep in mind that if you reduce the COLA too low, then you get folks coming in who will come in and tell you what your employees will be doing.
So what exactly was that comment supposed to be? Like, is that a warning to us?
No, it's just we're fortunate to be a non-union shop and can have these conversations. That's all I'm trying to say.
Councilor Crutcher?
So just to put a little bit of this into perspective, I was just chatting with my cohort here, Clark, who works for a large city, as the same one that I used to work for, and so their COLA was 2%, is that right? So I thought they were going to get none like they did the year before, so 2%. I was surprised to hear about that. But what I'd like to know is that if we backed off of that 7%, and let's say we backed down to 5 or something, just throwing a number out there, what you're saying, or at least what I'm hearing, is that then later on you come along with the salary study, and that's going to bump it back up again. When would that salary study be?
We do the salary studies once every 5 years, but yeah, that would be when we would be able to do it.
Okay, so essentially what I hear is that it's going to probably catch up with us in one fashion or another. So it's either going to be in the COLA or it's going to be in the salary study and then the subsequent adjustments for that. Sounds like there's a time gap though between when that would be happening, so.
It's really hard to predict. I think, my own personal opinion is it's hard to predict what the future is going to hold. I mean, next year we could have a recession, and that could be a whole different story. So
I've heard that nasty R word brought up.
It also depends on what other cities are doing with this question right now. And I appreciate that there's a lot of different points of view on what this timing means right now and what the economy is going to do. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't say, if Eugene is holding it to 2, then that's good news for keeping the COLA down in the 5-year projection. But there's plenty of cities who are doing 7, 8. There are other cities that are bound by labor contracts that are doing what the labor contracts say and will renegotiate when they're open, and they may jump or they may not. There's a whole lot of art to this question.
I might add, Stacy Holt asked a very good question. How are we paying for this? We typically have personnel costs going up every year by around 6%. And those years, if it's not COLA, then medical benefits are going up. We just happen to hit a year where there's no medical, health insurance isn't going to raise this year. And also the PERS contribution, this is a year where it's frozen and we won't have an increase as well. So it was just timing. We could do an incremental increase and catch up over time, but there's a possibility of, like Manager Hamburger mentioned a recession and medical insurance goes up 5 or 6% that year. And we also have this catch up on salary and wages, and that's kind of a scenario that we didn't want to run into in the future.
That's an important call out, Jim. I appreciate that. You did mention that. I've seen it in there that the lack of increase in the benefits was kind of what helped make that a little bit more palatable. I guess that when you're asking like how we, with a straight face, go back and explain to folks why it's 7%, there's reasons why that we can give. That's a great one. I appreciate that. Helps a bit.
But aren't you just saying that it's the cost of insurance to us didn't go up?
Right.
So your benefits didn't get worse, they stayed the same?
Right.
Okay. It's just the cost that the city's paying. So we're not gonna pay more to insurance, so let's make up for it in a COLA that's permanent year after year. Is that what? I'm
Well,
just,
the cost of insurance will probably go up next year.
on top of this increased salary that we'll be
Correct.
paying and possibly another ask for COLA again next year. I mean, I'm just saying, it just seems like a big jump this time. That's just my opinion.
I actually have a question, so I will call on me. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about kind of the size of the city staff and in comparison to other cities. So like, like how many city staff, for example, are working just kind of down the road in Cottage Grove compared to the size of the city staff here. And so I guess I'm hoping to put this in as we think about the size of our staff and the COLA, and what does that mean?
We have 20 people working for the city.
Correct.
Cottage Grove, I know, has over 100, and their population is just about double. So, yeah, so proportionately speaking, we do a lot with very small staff.
Councilor Castillo?
And I guess I'm glad you brought that up about the staff, but I'd also like to bring up the citizens in Creswell. I think the other night during our meeting, we were reminded that, was it 50% were low-income families? Is that correct? Do you have any idea, maybe a proper number?
They were looking at median income.
Oh, median income?
And so median income is different than 50% and those kinds of percentages. But we do have median income is pretty high, but that doesn't mean that everybody is living at that high a rate, and that was in the 70,000s. But when you look at the number of people who have median income under that, there's 50%, and the median income above that is 50%. So
there's still quite a few folks in town that are at median and below.
there's 50% are below the median income level. That's the statistic that was shown.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Strand?
Does anybody know what Social Security went up this year? I was running on that, and it went up, I think, over 3%.
Yeah, they're
5.9 was the, so that's very interesting, Social Security, because that, yeah. So, can I change the subject?
Sure.
Okay, I want to talk about sewer. I was very excited. Page 2 of the questions you gave us talked about the sewer batch reactor. It's going to cost $11.75 million. This is page 6 on the second page of the question. If we borrow $11.7 million, how is that going to increase sewer rates? And I was encouraged with your answer. The new debt will not require an increase, unlike what happened when the water plant was constructed in 2009, which some of us remember. The sewer rates already support debt service. So I was very encouraged to think that we're going to be able to take care of the sewer and not see a big jump in sewer rates.
That's why having healthy reserves is so important, and also having paid off the debt is so important.
And then I have one other comment. We had the Creswell First come in and talk to the city council at our last meeting about community contributions, which is on page 45 of the budget. And Creswell first presented their report to us that there are 9 organizations in Creswell that they supported last year. They're doing work in Creswell: Family Relief Nursery, Intergenerational Reading Collaboration, Hope and Safety Alliance, which used to be Women's Base, Creswell Heritage Foundation, Community Food for Creswell, Creswell Clubhouse, Family Resource Center, Family Support Services at Crest Lane, and Emergency Services at Creswell School District. And I was very impressed by the number of agencies that are working in Creswell to help people. Many of them, like you mentioned, Alonzo, people who really need a lot of help. And they gave out $27,000 last year, of which about $20,000 came from the city. And they gently asked if we couldn't increase this fund a little bit. And I see it's increased from $20,000 to $21,153, but if we were to bump that up to an even $23,000, is there any way we could do that? And if so, do you have any ideas how we could fund that?
We would have to take it out of materials and services.
Yeah.
I looked at Park Gas and Oil and saw a 5,000 number and then projected 5,000, but that was doubled. So I
That's
thought,
because that's the maintenance of our parks, and the fuel prices have gone out of the,
the roof.
The roof,
Yeah.
47%.
Okay.
we're behind already this year.
Well, I don't know where we could get an extra $1,900, but I thought I would just throw that out as a follow-up to the report that we had at council meeting.
We could have programs. No.
Back in 2000. Maintenance, electricity.
Yeah, there's electricity and utilities.
Those are activities, that's the use of the park. I don't see where we can cut it out at this time.
Okay? Thank you.
Councilor Castillo?
Thank you, Dave, for that, because I had something very similar along the same lines. This is the form, this is the paper that they had, and there was $3,000, I guess, were used for that. That was under the Family Resource Center, I believe, for the food, shelter, electricity, and transportation, and so forth. And I understand that Creswell First has the right to distribute it however they see fit. But I had something very, would be along the same lines as making a very similar suggestion, and I doubt it could be done, but maybe even designating some for people who need help to pay their services, such as their utility bills.
We'll talk about the new program.
Sure, Lane County is already funding that program. Lane County Health and Human Services has pledged for the city of Creswell $75,000 to pay for low-income water and sewer utility bills. We're going to kick that program actually off at the end of this month. And so folks that receive a slip that says they're at risk to lose their services can take that to community sharing in Cottage Grove and apply for the funding. Lane County will back that, again, $75,000 worth over the next 3 fiscal years.
And that's great, but that's anyone in Lane County, right?
No, that's just for the city of Creswell.
Just for Creswell?
Yeah, just for city of Creswell.
Okay, so Well, it would still be nice to consider bumping that up for Creswell first.
The utility bills that cannot be paid and go into arrears, the people are referred to community sharing, not Creswell First. Creswell First doesn't have the staffing to determine whether or not the person is a legitimate receiver of those funds, but community sharing does have that. And community sharing has its own funds as well to help with the utility bills. And so that's where we generally send people.
Okay.
I'd like to add on to that, because that actually was, community sharing was one of the considerations as we were setting water and sewer rates, because we knew that that was an available option for people. So, but can you tell me, when somebody gets their utility bill and they go to community sharing because they can't pay that, does some of that, does all of their bill qualify for that? Even the policing and things that are on that bill?
Because the last thing that's paid is the water bill, the water portion. I've been told that it pays the whole bill.
Okay. So it's $25,000 a year. Do you know what, and by any chance, how much has been used in past years?
Sure. We did a similar program at the city of Creswell with our CARES funding and
During COVID.
And we funded $28,000. $28,000, yeah.
Mayor Schramm?
There's another program that Creswell's had for many years called H2O. You're familiar with that? So if you look on your utility bill, you can make a contribution on your utility bill. It goes into, it's called H2O fund, and that money goes directly to community sharing in Cottage Grove. And that's been there for many years, well over 10 years. And it's a way that Creswell people can give $5 extra a month, 10, whatever you'd like to. It goes directly to community sharing, and it's used directly to help offset water utility rates for Creswell people who have a need. So get that message out. If you know people who are struggling to pay that, community sharing in Cottage Grove administers that for us.
Thank you. That's been a wonderful program throughout the years that I've been here, and the receptionist has been very helpful in referring people to them when they come in and they're distraught. They've received a notice of disconnect, and it's been a good program for the city of Creswell.
All right, the floor is open if there's any other questions or any other discussion. Councilor Butcher? Roger?
All right, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up street funds. So I'm chairing of the ad hoc road committee. A couple of us councilors are on that as well. Somebody asked a very excellent question about the fund balances and whether that would affect the Second Street project if, let's see, I'm going to read the question here. So there's two different ones, I think. So, yes, the plan, the Second Street improvements are projected at $1.7 million if the city does not come up with a plan for raising additional funds for roads. Will this project be put on hold? And you said not necessarily. The South Second Street improvements from Oregon Avenue to F Street are currently scheduled in a capital improvement plan without using additional funding sources. The completion of the project in fiscal year 25-26 will use the capital project reserves, require a local improvement district, and use SDC reserves. So what I'm taking from that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that that project is scheduled 3 years from now, right? Because we're still kind of putting aside and setting aside money. but then once that project's done, we're broke.
Correct.
Yeah, we have to start setting aside, and it could be years before we're able to get to the next project.
Sure, it could be 6 years before we get to the next $1 million project.
Okay. So while that fund balance looks super nice and everything, it'll go quickly and be gone. And so just to kind of point out in all of our considerations this evening that we still need to find a way to fund our roads. And that some of those options include things like adding to, a potential transportation fee on the utility bill, which has been a subject that we've talked about quite a bit tonight. So I can see where we would want to be careful about making that bill go up too terribly much. So we just need to keep that all in mind as we move forward. That's my pitch, so to speak, for, and just because we'll be talking about that a lot at council coming up, so.
Sure.
Mayor Strand?
So this ties in with Kevin's question. It says that the completion of the project will require an LID. So we're planning to create a local, remind me what LID stands for again?
Local Improvement District, and we're just discussing it at this time.
Okay, so it's not determined yet. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to note that, speaking to the LID formation and in the future plans, none of the budget decisions will be setting rates or setting up districts but it is pertinent to discuss them during the budget for sure.
All right, any additional questions, discussion? Stacy?
It was mentioned that other cities are getting 7-8% COLA. Can you tell me what cities those are?
I was talking to the city of Cottage Grove, and they've actually come to us with their proposed rates for next year for their building services.
I have a listserv that is a bunch of city managers that post information, and I can't give you off the top of my head, but there were a number that were doing the 7 and some even 8. I was really surprised.
Creswell size?
All sizes, all sizes. A lot of it has to do with contracts that are in place.
Councilor Newman?
So I'm wondering, since there's been so much discussion about the COLA, is how would one go about for that to be different than what is the proposed 7%?
You would need to make a motion, and it would need to be seconded, and it would need to be voted upon, and then it would be when the final document is voted on tonight, or if you wish to proceed to another night, you would adopt it as amended.
I am in agreement with Councilor Castilla as well as Budget Member Holt. The 7% is quite a bit of a jump. Although I do want to honor city staff, because as mentioned before that we are on a smaller employee team as some other places like Cottage Grove was mentioned. And we want to keep the staff that we have. But 7% is quite a large jump. So thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Any additional discussion? Questions? All right, so moving forward, we're at item number 5. Is that motion to approve the 2022-2023 budget? would now entertain a motion. Manager Amber?
The motion will have to be as amended, since we amended it for the fiber.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Okay, excellent reminder, thank you. Floor is open for a motion.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to decrease that COLA to 5%.
So there is a motion by Councilor Castillo to decrease the amount of the COLA from 7% to 5%. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Member Holt. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Councilor Crutcher?
So 5% sounds like a great round number, but I don't really think that I understand the full implications of what that 5% are going to be. So I don't know if we can do that here now, but if we could figure out exactly what that 5% is going to do for us, I think I would be more educated in my vote.
Sure. Sure, we can look at total, we can get a ballpark at least. We can go to personal services on page 37, 36, 37. $2.4 million, of that 2.4 million, approximately 60% of that is actual salaries. So that makes sense, about 1.4 million in payroll citywide. Times 0.05. So that'd be $72,000 at 5% citywide, and 100,800 at 7%. Did I say 72,000 even on the first number?
At 5.
Yeah, so it would be a savings of $28,800 citywide.
How much?
$28,800. Approximately, that's.
Member Holt?
Would that enable us to fund better that program that Mayor was talking about?
So you want to take $28,800 out of the personnel services and put it into other services, other things? You want to put it into?
I was just curious if we would be able to fund it in the way that he had requested. I think it was a couple $1,000s more. Would that money be able to be distributed to things like that? Is what I'm asking, I guess.
Into the community services fund, you meant?
Yeah. Yes, just in general, can it be redistributed, or I don't know how it works.
So that's in the general fund, and I'm looking at, right now I'm calculating the
Depends.
differences in the general fund alone.
Yeah.
So I think what you're talking about then, at least what I had mentioned, was going from 21,100 to 23,000, so that's a jump of $1,850. So that 28,000 savings you're talking about, you only need 1,850.
Yeah, I was curious if that was doable, I just didn't know. Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that either.
We have to determine what the impact is on the general fund, and then, but a small number like that, I would think would be doable.
Yeah, the impact to general fund is $7,400 roughly. The difference between 7% and 5% COLA.
I just have a
Portion of that, you were showing that it's going to add, what, an average of $6.61 to the water bill, which is to the actual residents in the community. What other types of ways does that impact the residents in the community as far as their expense goes, or is it only on the water bill?
I'll say the other user fees are the building department. We charge building permit fees.
But those are set by Cottage Grove.
Those are set by
So that
Cottage
would
Grove.
be a.
I'm just trying to think of
We're
the
just trying
community at large. How, is there any way that it's going to impact, every resident? Because the water bill essentially affects every resident.
Correct.
Where the other fees you're talking about are individual specific. So it's only the impact on the water bill.
Correct.
So if we're lowering this from 7 to say 5%, it'll lower that, maybe like 70 cents, something like that?
It's the utility bill.
The utility bill. I keep calling it the water bill, but the utility bill, yes.
It'll hit the sewer bill as well.
Right, so that 661 on average, that was at 7%, is what you were talking about. So that's gonna lower that down just a tiny bit, by lowering it down to 5%. I'm just trying to get the feel of how it's going to impact residents.
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Discussion? See, my question, again, I'll call it myself. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit, and I'm asking you to kind of project a little bit, but the difference between a 5% COLA increase and a 7% COLA increase. Can you talk a little bit about what that might feel like as an employee of the city of Creswell? Just that difference of 2%. Do you feel like that will cause an issue of staff retention or not?
That's probably the biggest concern is the staff retention. Just because we are lean and mean, and the job market is fairly competitive for professionals right now. Also, our public works employees will be, there'll be some competition there for our local, like Michelle.
And that's exactly what they told us. It didn't have anything to do with the work, it didn't have anything to do with the work environment, the hours, family, anything. It was pay, and it was in public works.
All right, so it's a fair assumption then that this would impact staff retention.
It could impact public works.
Member Gold?
Now, what's the turnover like with public works right now?
We haven't had any turnover since we did our salary study, our last salary study.
Yeah, we lost one employee just before that.
Which was when?
2 years ago, so right before the pandemic. And we lost one employee who went to work for EWIP, I believe.
Yeah. And we've lost one employee that went to work for the state this past year.
Member Michelson?
So I just want to make a comment based off of what Manager Amberg said earlier in regarding potentially unionization of the city. A lot of public service employees that are part of a union, for example, they get anywhere between about 3 to 7% increases annually. So depending on which union was it and what the negotiated rates came to, if that ever gets settled in the city, now mind you, I'm not an anti-union person. I work for a company that has 5 unions, but we do want to be really careful in evoking that thought in the city, because if that happens, as she mentioned earlier, we can at least discuss this now. If for some reason a union were to come into place, the only room for discussion is contract negotiations. Outside that, we have no leverage whatsoever. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, not as justification for the 7% or the 5% or anything else, but just for anybody that might be fairly uninformed about unions and public service. That's really what we're looking at if for some reason that were to ever be evoked here in Creswell.
Member Holt?
I don't think that we should make decisions on ifs when it comes to our community when we've already said that, the lower 50% of our community is under median pay, So we're asking our community to implement quite a large increase this year when a lot of them aren't going to see one themselves. And this is a year that everyone is struggling. I'm just looking at my community. I'm not looking at whether or not we have union. And I care about my community. So.
Mayor Stern? You look like you had a...
What I'm hearing from you is that a 7% increase, how that will impact our residents, all of us. I'll see part of that in my utility fee every month. But if my numbers are correct, it's about 50 cents a month total. That's $6 a year. So there's other ways that increase is going to work throughout the total budget. I mean, we have a multi-million-dollar budget. It's going to be factored into the whole thing. The amount that we're going to feel in terms of out of my pocket is minimal. It's going to be spread through a whole multi-million-dollar budget. So I just want to throw that in there. While the number is high, I admit 7%. Yet we're in unprecedented times. When was the last time we had an 8% CPI going on? I can't ever remember that. So
Thank you, Mayor Strandman. Our hope is that it plateaus, not continues at this pace.
Councilor Pachu?
I'll do another add-on here. So when we're thinking about those that are on fixed incomes, you hear about that a lot. My neighbor comes over and pesters me all the time. And always reminds me she's on a fixed income. And so I listen to her because I know that she's just one of many here in Creswell. Now, when it comes to the water and sewer, had a good discussion with Jim about this last week or week before, something about that. I understand that the base rate for water and then the water used was kind of a point of contention for folks at one time, because the idea was that they were paying this base rate that included a certain number of gallons of water, and then so folks were saying, well, I don't utilize all that water, so I'm paying for water that I'm not using. But that was actually taken care of, back in 2018, when the structure was basically changed so that you don't get that base amount. You pay for the water that you use. Now the sewer, that's another thing, and that will be something that will need to true up at some point. But I only point that out for the fact that I think that the council, the water rate committee, has always had an eye towards fairness and ensuring that people aren't paying any more than they have to, for at least in that regard. So I feel that we're definitely conscious of our folks that are on fixed incomes to the point where even that little bit, which really doesn't constitute a whole lot, like I think that it only changes a person's bill by a couple bucks or something like that per month or whatever, but a couple bucks is a couple bucks. And so that's, I think we're probably trying to figure out, well, why did you bring all this up, Kevin? And the reason I brought it up is the fairness and the folks that are on tight incomes is extremely important in the decision making that we're doing here tonight. So if we back off the COLA, that doesn't mean that the sewer and water rates change any. Those proposed rates are those rates, and so it almost sounds like if we were considering a change, that we would be also wanting to maybe consider a change in those rates to partially adjust. Because where does besides giving that $28,800 and having $2,000 of it go to Creswell first, where would the rest of that money go? Would it just go in reserves or?
I think it's important that this body know that rates are not set by the budget committee. Rates are set they're recommended by the budget advisory committee to the city council, and the city council sets the rates. So if you wanted to do anything with the rates, the city council would have to be that body that would do that.
Okay, so I think the more, and I appreciate that, because just realize tonight that if we decide for a lower COLA, that doesn't mean that the water and sewer rates are going to go down. Those have been established and or will be established when council agrees to it. So,
Councilor Castillo?
Yes, understood. I guess I'm just going to throw my plug out there as well in regards to fairness. Because I hear it from many, many folks, low income, fixed income, I hear it. And places I go and people come up to me and I say, you don't live in Creswell, I don't want to hear it. So, but in fairness, I don't want to bring forward a lot of the things that people are suggesting that I bring forward in regards to these rates. But like I said earlier, I would not be opposed to reviewing them. So, but in fairness, because I see this from both ends, from the community, and what we need to do to invest in the future for the good of the city, in all fairness, I believe 5% is very fair.
5% water?
COLA.
COLA, okay, thank you.
I was going to say, I wanted to just gently remind us all that the motion on the table is around the 5% COLA, or dropping the COLA from a 7% down to a 5%. And so that should be the discussion that we're having right now, for now. Mayor Strand?
Coming back to your observation, Kevin, and water and sewer rates are being set, and as is the policing, those rates have been set. So then my question is, if we move from 7 to 5%, how does that in any way affect anything in the budget, other than that our employees receive 2% lower COLA? It doesn't impact the rates. It's not going to change our water and sewer rates. It's not going to impact what we charge people for a building permit or for a dog license. How does a 2% change impact the budget in any way, other than 2% is less is spent?
Well, tonight, you could decide, in addition, a motion could be made to take some of the savings from the COLA and put it to other areas in the budget, or absent that, what would happen would be the money would go into reserves.
I just have another quick question. I'm wondering if you could speak to, because what you talked about earlier is that likely a decrease in COLA would probably lead to staff departing, right? So it's a staff retention issue. And I was wondering if you could speak to how much does it cost for us to post and recruit for and then onboard a new staff member? And again, ballpark is great.
You're asking us some questions I don't have answers to right off the top of my head. We will be losing a staff person this year, and we will be going through a full recruitment for that. And that is it is a long process, and it does take a lot of staff time, so staff time is involved as well. And then you probably want to go through a couple of rounds of interviews, because you want to make double sure, because this person, once they're here, they're here. And then there's all of the noticing and such.
Sure, I saw Public Work Director Cliff Blue's hand up. I know he knows the training costs because he budgets that every year.
Could you speak to that, please?
I could, yeah. So for a Public Works employee to become fully certified and have all of the requirements to fulfill their job description, it takes close to 2 years for them to come up to speed. So they have to get certified with the state for water and sewer, they have to get a CDL, they have to have competent person training, they have to be flagger certified, and probably a few that I'm missing. I have done a study on that for them to be trained, and it takes about a 2-year period. It's about $30,000 per employee.
Thank you.
I don't think that the employee that we're going to be replacing will cost that much this year, but it'll be in the tens of thousands.
This is very helpful, thank you. Member Orton?
Following up on his statement, the tens to $30,000, who's paying for that? The employee or the city?
For certifications?
Certification.
The city pays for the certifications. For the employee that we would be bringing in, we would be paying for them to get training.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion or questions for the motion on the table, which again is to reduce the amount of the COLA from a proposed 7% to a 5%. Councilor Osborne?
I just want to make a statement that to retain an employee is a lot cheaper than to recruit and train a new one.
Excellent. Any other discussion, questions? Statements? All right, seeing none, so the motion on the table is to reduce the proposed amount of the COLA from a 7% to a 5%. So a vote of affirmation would reduce that amount. A vote of dissent would maintain that 7% proposed COLA rate. Are there any questions about what the vote means? This is a tricky one because it's amendment to it's an amendment process, so I want to help everyone as much as I can. Mayor Strand.
I have a question. So a yes vote would pass the motion. A no vote would defeat the motion. It would retain the 7% until we approve the budget as is.
Correct.
Because you can then come back with a new motion to move it to 3% or 15%.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. All right, so all of those in favor of moving to a 5% COLA, please raise your hand. All of those opposed?
Wait.
Oh,
Can
sorry.
I go back?
Yep.
Thank you.
Hands again. All of those opposed, please raise your hand.
You do have to vote, by the way. You have an obligation to vote, so.
Okay, hang on just 1 minute. I mean, you can put your hands down, but hang on just 1 minute. Okay.
And I'm just gonna double check, were there any abstentions? Okay, by a vote of 5 to 7 to 0, this motion fails. All right, so this moves us back to the agenda item number 5, which is the motion to approve the 2022-2023 budget.
As amended.
As amended. All right, do we have a motion on the floor? Member Kent.
I move to approve the budget for the city of Creswell for the 2022 to 2023 fiscal year as amended.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the budget as amended. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Osborne. Are there any final discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion or indications of discussion, all of those in favor of approving the 2022-2023 fiscal year as amended, please raise your hand. Okay. All those opposed, same sign.
Okay.
Okay, all right, and again, just double checking, any abstentions? And that tells me there's none, excellent. All right, by a vote of 9 to 3 to 0, this motion passes. All right, I just want to pause for a moment, and I just want to thank you all so much for that conversation and the discussion and the insightfulness. You all had just an amazing eye towards the residents and the daily lived experience for the citizens of Creswell. And while it was tense, right, it was a difficult discussion. I just want to express my appreciation for the discussion and the richness of the discussion that was had tonight, and just the clarifications, and just I think we all did exactly what Mayor Stram charged us to do, which is to ask questions and share perspectives and to think about our community. So I just wanted to pause and just say thank you so much for the work with that motion. Any other discussion before we move to item number 6? Okay, so item number 6 on the agenda is a motion to approve taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Is there a motion on the table? Mayor Strand.
I move to approve taxes for 2022-2023 fiscal year at the rate of $2.6705 per $1,000 of assessed value for operating purposes in the general fund to be certified by the tax assessor.
There's a motion on the floor. There's
a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Orton. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, we will move to a vote. So all of those in favor of the motion as presented, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Again, I'll ask for any abstentions. Seeing none. All right, this motion passes by a vote of 12-0-0. All right, seeing we have now come to agenda item number 7, which is an adjournment. I again just want to express my just sincere and heartfelt gratitude for the work that we've done here tonight for our citizens. And at 7:40 p.m., we are adjourned.
Thank you so much to each and every one of you. I really appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you, Doug. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Alonzo.
All the meeting on what does mistakes, I want to take your
It all happens.
You won't notice if I do something like that.
Thank you. I think the only way anyone's going to be, I never asked me to do
Just kind of like limiting my days and I stay where Cameron staff all the time.
I knew that there was something, yeah, just like, there, it gets going. All right, well,
Yeah, Justin. And the thing of it is that I would always say that if we had better and competitive pay.
I'll be there at 7
Well, enjoy the party.
Well, we had to go through two.
All the young people.
Oh, that's fine.
But ultimately, get
Silent thing all day long.